Today, we have the awesome pleasure of being joined by Zakua Ventures team members Margarita and Vivin, who are going to help us walk through the entire construction technology industry, from bricklaying robots to printing construction, even some off-site LiDAR, all kinds of technologies. I've really only seen 3D printed construction companies, so we're going to be entering a whole new world of construction with the Zakua team today. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'm really excited to talk about all the awesome companies you guys have been investing in and looking at.
Great to be here, Jared. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, could you please introduce a little bit about Zakua Ventures?
Sure. Zakua is an early stage construction tech focused venture capital fund. We are a global fund. We deploy capital all across the world. We 14 members who are located across the different geographies. I'm in San Francisco, but I've partnered in Madrid and Singapore, and Marga here is based in Mexico City. And we come from the construction space, so we've worked in corporates and construction over a period of time, have extensive experience in investing in the space, and we wanted to set up something that helps entrepreneurs in this space to develop and grow and so on and so forth. And we're backed by some of the largest corporates in the built environment.
Margarita, you're in Mexico City. How your specialty is in engineering, if I'm correct?
No, I have a different background. Vivin is the engineer here of us, so I'm a lawyer by training.
You guys published an awesome report on a lot of the companies you think are notable in the construction technology space. We're about to go over a lot of those companies. How did you go about creating the different sections, and what was your strategy?
Yeah, so there, basically what we try to show is where we are in terms of construction robotics, and where are the trends that are accelerating the adoption of robotics. And for that, I think it would be good to understand that construction, even though it's the largest component of the world's GDP, it has remained laggard in terms of innovation and automation. But we have seen, like in the last years, some tailwinds accelerating this process. And we have identified, so to say, like four big trends. First and most urgent one, it would be like the global labor shortage. So with workers aging and closer to retirement, and young people not being so attracted to the industry, so we've seen a lack of skilled workers in the industry. Also, there has been a big push on sustainability. So construction, and more precisely cement production, is responsible for 7% of global CO2 emissions. So there has been a change in the mentality, and there has been regulations trying to improve the way of we've traditionally constructed. Then also another trend that we've seen has accelerated or has improved the adoption of robotics is that they have now new capabilities. Let's say they're smarter and cheaper. So now they have computer vision, machine learning. So they've improved their capabilities, and this has broadened the use cases where they can be applied. So making them, so to say, smarter and more sophisticated. And then finally, also a new business model or payment model. So like back in the days, for any development of robotics, you would have a high initial investment, and now this has changed. You can change from a capex model to an opex model, so more a recurring fee that you pay for the usage of the robots. So this has also broadened the capabilities and the opportunities to adopt the robotics. So these are generally like the four big trends that we see that have made possible for more robots to be in the job site, or for more development of robotics. I don't know, Vivi, if you want to complement something.
I think you covered it quite well. The overarching feeling is that this segment did not really exist even 5 years back. But now there are more than 70 companies which are doing construction robotics. So we are still in the early stages of adoption in this space. And as things improve, as the costs come down, as labor shortage becomes more extreme, we only expect this to pick up more dramatically.
And so coming back to the question on how we split this, is like we see two big trends. One is like literally robots in the job site, so robots doing some of the more repetitive and more labor demanding tasks. This being done by robots, and we can go through the specific use cases that we've identified. And another one is a shift from the job site to factories. So in order to have more controlled environment, you have that all or part of the construction is being shifted to factories, to the offsite, and this is where 3D printing or prefab comes in.
That's interesting. Most 3D printed homes in the United States are printed on-site, actually.
There's both. There are solutions that print directly on-site and has some challenges with mostly goes on precisely on the different environment that you have. So to make the right mix, to be able to adapt to the changing environment, and some other solutions like Icon or like some others that go on the job site.
Yeah, I think that labor shortage is really a problem a lot of people feel, and it's a lot of people are starting to look for a technological solution since it's provided help in so many other industries, yet in construction, things are changing much slower. But like you mentioned, 5 years ago, it was nothing, and now we have all these companies starting to influence.
Exactly.
Cool. So are you guys ready to jump into some of them?
Let's do it.
Here's the map of all the startups Zakua Ventures and I will talk about today. It's non-exhaustive, and of course there are other interesting companies in the construction automation field, but when Zakua Ventures published this list, I wanted to get them on the podcast to talk about all of these companies because many of them I haven't heard of yet. On this podcast, we of course mostly talk about 3D printed construction, but there are all kinds of automation that are exciting.
You mentioned we'd start with the on-site works.
Let's start with on-site robotics, and we can start with bricklaying, and then Margaret can take it, and then we can switch from there.
Okay, so bricklaying.
Yeah.
What is bricklaying?
So basically, this is bricklaying robots are the ones that perform like either both the picking of the bricks and putting mortar on them and laying the bricks to build either roads, walls, or whatever, or just doing one of those, like just picking the bricks and therefore helping the mason perform its work. So we have here different startups. So one is, for example, Fast Brick Robotics. Fast Brick Robotics is like a truck that has an arm that has the ability to pick the bricks, put the mortar and do it and do it for a wall. Similarly with General Systems, they are able to this is semi-automatic, so they put the bricks and you have they collaborate with the mason to put the mason, and also construction robotics. They were again, so the robot is put in the scaffold and you fill the robot with the bricks and with the concrete. And the robot is able to do both, take the brick, put the mason, and lay it to form a wall.
I know Fast Brick Robotics has a couple homes built in Australia. They've also done commercial projects. Have the other companies built buildings yet?
So both of them, so construction robotics as well as General Systems, they've been deployed in sites. Construction robotics has been around for almost 10 years now. So it's been on many projects, and they don't build full buildings, but they build walls, for example, and they build aspects of a building, and they've been deployed on many project sites.
As a subcontractor?
Not even a subcontractor, as a unit of a subcontractor. They are service provider to a subcontractor. General Systems is still early. They have a few projects. They have deployed in a few locations, but I wouldn't say they are as mature as construction robotics or Fast Brick Robotics.
Fast Brick seems to be taking a holistic approach, and they want to really change the whole construction process.
Yes, that is correct.
That's different than the other two?
It's slightly different from the other two. I'll also let Marga comment on it. Fast Brick is they're trying to take bigger portions of the project because it's much more mechanized. It's just rolling out your brick walls and layers and stuff. It's changing the process entirely. The other two are augmenting existing processes. Construction robotics has two different equipment, one which lays the bricks, one which helps you lift the bricks, and it's augmenting human capacity in terms of doing it. Whereas General Systems, it actually changes the types of masonry you can lay. It doesn't Rather than laying bricks, it just lays masonry blocks, which are much larger and more difficult to maneuver and so on. So they actually augment capacity in terms of laying larger structures.
Hmm. Great. And so which section should we move on to next?
Flooring?
Okay.
Yeah. So flooring is basically, we have like there are two different type of startups. Like one is just finishing like the how you say the last finishing of the floors, and then another one is on insulation. Like Easy Flooring Robotics is like literally finishing the floors as it says, and QBot is the one on insulation, so helping or improving the insulation of the floors.
Yeah, it's interesting with so many different parts of the job being automated, how far you have to wonder how far till the whole thing is automated.
Until you have a full building being built by robots, I think it's still very early.
Yeah, they get closer and closer all the time. But yeah,
It
the
happens in
flooring.
Japan, and actually Japan, some sites are very automated. But the thing with having all of them work together is robot to robot communication becomes very, very important. Right now, most of these startups are still solving the first level problem on how to do the application, but robot to robot communication becomes much more important as you go to the second level of saying how do you deploy multiple robots on job sites at one time. I don't think we've reached that level of maturity right
Mhm.
now, but eventually we will get there.
Yeah, right now the teams doing multiple types of automation are using one robot with different tools or something along those lines instead
Right.
of cobots or at the same time, like you said.
Exactly. And also, usually these are different rates, right? The construction on site is a little complicated due to different people performing different tasks. And it's not, the ownership is kind of fragmented. So it's not like one person is doing the flooring and the other
Mhm.
person is doing the drywall. And they don't really have the same timelines and objectives at all points in time. And therefore, coordination is even more complicated because most of this will have to come from the general contractor if they are to coordinate really well. And that's why it hasn't really been done so far. But eventually, these problems will start to be solved.
So now, as we move on to drywall, uh, what's going on there?
So I would probably combine two, three of these segments together: drywall, plastering, and painting. They're all similar archetypes. And when
Okay.
we talk about drywall, there are a few different things we need to think about. Say, drywall finishing is 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 a nasty kind of application because one, it is backbreaking, it's very repetitive. Two, when you do the drywall finishing, the chemicals which are there are injurious to health. There's usually silica dust included in drywall as well. So these are kind of tasks that nobody wants to do, right? It has to be done, but nobody really wants to do. And if you have a robot which can do this, one, it's repetitive, so it can be automated much more easily. Two, you can actually change the workflows when you look at drywall finishing. Typically, if you want a very fine finish in drywall as level 4 or level 5 finish, you'll have to apply two coats of finishing a paint into it, right? And a robot can actually do it in one coating. That's because you have the force control to be able to get to a certain level of finish, which humans struggle to get to. And this change in workflow actually expedites the way in which you can do the application. You can do it much faster than humans can do. So safer, it's faster, and it's more efficient. And that's why drywall finishing is starting to take off from a robotic application. Similarly, when you look at plastering or painting, right? Plastering on painting is tedious, especially if you're looking at high ceilings, especially if you're looking at moving from one place to other. It becomes a dangerous activity because people have to climb on ladders, do the painting, come down, move the ladders, climb again, and people try to take shortcuts. They try to lean on ladders from one direction. So there's a lot of fall incidents which happen during painting and so on. And that's why painting robots are so effective. And the plastering is the same concept. There are multiple things that you look at when you're developing a robot in the space. You have to look at the mobility platforms. You'll have to look at injection mechanisms. You'll have to look at exact force control when it comes to drywall finishing, but also the consistency of finish when it comes to painting and stuff. So lots of different applications that you need to think about. but there's immense value that can be unlocked by having robots in this space.
Well, there's a bunch of companies in this sector. I think the best way we can give the audience an idea of them is if you could try to describe each one's robot
Mhm.
in a sentence or two, if that's possible.
So Canvas, for example, is a drywall finishing robot. So it's a mobile robotic platform which is finishing the drywall by applying the plaster, not plaster, the drywall paint, and then finishing it off. Okibo, on the other hand, right now is finishing or focusing more on painting. So it's a full stack built robot which is able to apply paint, and it can do it both on roofs as well as on walls, right? If I look at PaintJet is for industrial painting applications where it can go into high elevations
What about
and do.
Nextera?
Nextera is one which actually is more advanced from painting application perspective. So most of these outside of Canvas and Okibo are in the painting plastering kind of space, right? So less plastering, more painting, because painting is so relevant as an application. Most of these are building mobile platforms for
So
painting.
what's the difference between Nextera and PaintJet?
Uh, PaintJet is less automated compared to Nextera. So PaintJet is mostly a mobile crane which goes up, and the painting is not fully automated yet. It's semi-automated. Nextera is much more automated and it's a more modern architecture from a painting perspective.
And I see ABB is to the left of PrintJet. The one in the blue box to the left of that, what? I can't read that logo.
I think it's HousePot. I can't read it either, so I'll need to magnify it and see what
It's
it is. Just give
transformer.
me a
Is it?
So give me a second. Transformer.
Yeah.
It's transformer. So
Yeah.
ABB here more is a industrial robot, or more than being a on-site physical robot. They don't really
My
have an
channel
on-site.
subscribers are very familiar with the ABB robotic arm and KUKA robotic arms that are used in printing all the time. So we can skip that one, and
And
the other one is
the other one is transformer, which is also a paint provider. It's not super differentiated compared to others. One we missed is finished robotics. It's very similar to Okibo or similar stacks. Again, painting robot just has much more elevation with which it can print as well.
And what about R23?
But AR23 is a low-cost solution from a robotic perspective. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that painting robots can also be catering to lower-cost settings. So their components are frame dependent. They're frame-based components, and it's probably a robot which costs a third of what existing painting robots which exist, and that is the major source of differentiation that they have. They still have to fine-tune it, but they could expand the horizon in which where painting robots could be applied.
Very cool. What about HouseBots?
HouseBots is again a very standard painting robot. It's similar in architecture to your not AR23, more like finished robot. Finished robots, Okibo, and HouseBot are similar in architecture and more for indoor painting rather than external painting. So that's also a differentiation between PaintJet. PaintJet is more external for warehouses and stuff like that.
And the far right side of painting, we have the blue, another blue logo.
So the blue logo, let me,
Pink.
Space Robotics.
Space robotics.
So again, this segment is slightly different. Space Robotics comes from India. So they're trying to capture the Indian painting market. So the use case is similar. They're also starting with high level painting and so on and so forth. Tech stack is they have a good tech stack actually. They are developing a more efficient painting mechanism, but the application is the same.
And then the plastering company, which there's only one of, TUP.
So TUP is a German plaster. So the difference between them and the painting robot is plaster from a flowing mechanism is much thicker. It doesn't flow as smoothly as painting. So the mechanism of plastering, the mechanism of making sure this stays on. So they just have to make sure that the layering is much more efficient when it comes to plastering robots. and the flow mechanism is altered. And that's why they are a little bit different from the painting robots, because that the viscosity is significantly higher when it comes to plastering robots.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they're quite a bit different. It seems like you'd almost need a different kind of robot for every different kind of finish
Yes, you're correct.
at the current
Uh,
stage, but who knows? Maybe one of these companies comes up with something clever.
it's a, TUP still has one form factor in which they do the plastering process and so on. It's not multiple robots for multiple surfaces. So the plastering that they do is still for flat surfaces, not for curved surfaces and so on. So robots today still have limitations on what they can be used for. Right now they're still, uh, I would say, they are in between being mature and very early, right? So they have traction, they are deployed on sites and so on and so forth. But it's not like they can do all the applications.
Okay. The next one with on-site, if we go down, is layout. Uh,
Layout is another interesting application because when we talk about layout, measuring takes about 30% of the time of any task that you're doing. Because what you have to do is every time you are either drilling or you are doing any kind of any activity, it needs you to measure, it needs you to mark, and then typically people would be using tape measures, or then people be using tape total stations, and usually it's a two-people job. And because it's a two-people job and it's very manual, it takes a lot of time. What layout robots are trying to do is they are trying to ingest the plans. And then after ingesting the plans, they are automatically laying this out on the job site. And this can be done at night when nobody's there on the job site. And because this can be done at night, it fast tracks projects significantly, because what would have taken you half a day is now already ready by the time you come on job site. And that's why it becomes very interesting. And it's being tried to solve in various different form factors. So I'll take a couple of examples. Dusty, for example, uses a laser pointer in terms of doing the marking. So based on the laser pointer, it can go in different directions, do the marking, and it can get the job done on most flat surfaces, right? It doesn't do walls, it doesn't do roofs, it just does the floors. But that's what Dusty does. If you look at Rugged, it's a slightly different technology. They don't use laser pointers. They use with their own SLAM-based positioning techniques to do the layout. Again, very effective. They have the similar results to what Dusty is doing, but a different technology stack.
well, sorry,
If
layout guys, but I don't really consider you a building activity. So we can, is there another one in this section you think is really important to mention?
I would mention Civ Robotics because they are slightly different. Civ Robotics doesn't do it on indoors. It does staking on large solar projects or large infrastructure projects. So staking is a very manual activity, and this just drops markers where the stakes need to go in, and does it in a very precise manner. So this is more like outdoor marking instead of indoor marking.
Very nice. Now we get into two very cool sections, fastening and drilling.
So fastening, I probably will spend a little bit of time because we have a portfolio company called Race Robotics in this space, and we're very, very excited about that.
Great.
So fastening is the most prevalent application in job sites. Anything that you do, you'll need to do fastening, because whether you're anchoring stuff, you're building support, whether it's rebar, or anything that you're doing requires an element of fastening. There's some critical applications like curtain wall and facade, where fastening is actually quite dangerous to do because of installation of anchor channels. What happens is if you're installing anchor channels, this is right on the edge. This is where the curtain walls and the glass panes come in. And most of the time when you're doing the installation, the people are actually hanging off the ledge. So the safety risks are significantly high. So that's where Race Robotics comes in. It does the automatic installation of these anchor channels. And the way it does this is by first identifying where the holes need to be drilled. So it has a total station installed. It can precisely position. And while it's positioning, it can use its end effectors and do the drilling. And then it also has the ability to change the end effectors and then do the bolting and install the entire anchor channel. And this actually, one, is safer, but it's 3x faster than humans today. And it'll probably be 6x faster by the time they make it fully efficient. And also it's a mobile platform, right? So eventually you can put scanning systems on it. Eventually it can do a fastening in other dimensions, in walls and ceilings and everywhere else. And that's why this is so interesting. And Marga, if you want to comment on that as well.
No, if you want, just also commenting on the team and like why. So not just from a technological perspective and the tech stack was interesting, but also from just a pure founding team, right? So we have here Gary, who's a computer science engineer, and Conley, who's a structural engineer. So they both understand very well the engineering behind, but also have a good understanding of the business and the industry itself. So they've worked in construction, so understand the dynamics, which is also very important to when you're going to deploy the robots, right? So you need to understand how the different stakeholders interact in order to be able to express and better understand how to plug and play your solution.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think the best companies in the world are run by engineering leaders.
I agree. And especially complementary engineering leaders. So I think understanding the technical aspect and understanding the workflow aspect, if you are able to understand both together, then those are the best teams because you truly understand the solution and are building a technical solution which is trying to solve that.
Yeah, you really see a lot of, and maybe we can talk about this afterwards in a debrief or something, but a lot of non-technical founders that are responsible for the business side, but don't really understand the technological side, which gets really messy.
Yes, you need a good link between the two. And ideally, we do like technical founders. We do really like founders who know the technical aspects of it as well.
Well, Ray sounds like a fascinating company. What about Hilti and Baobot?
So Hilti and Bobot are doing a sub-segment of the fastening process, which is the drilling process, right? So drilling is fairly complicated, and what Hilti is doing specifically is overhead drilling, and Bobot is also building a platform similar to that. So overhead drilling is kind of time-consuming, exactly because some of the reasons I mentioned for painting. Because one, it has tall ceilings, you have to go on ladders, you have to drill. When you're drilling, there's stuff falling on your face and you have to be accurate and you have to keep moving and stuff like that. And it's stressful because you have to have the tool in your hands and it has a lot of upper body strain when you're drilling overhead. So Hilti has built the JBot, which basically positions itself, takes the BIM drawings, and then goes and drills sequentially. And it also is faster than human applications right now, especially for sequential operations. So it's a very interesting robot. They took quite some time to develop it, but I think it's a very robust platform which has been developed by them.
And from my perspective, the Baobot machine looks very similar, box with an arm that drills.
Exactly. You are correct. You are correct. It looks similar, similar application, a little bit earlier in the journey than Hilti. Hilti has just been doing it longer. But Baobot is a similar platform. And Fisher generally recently acquired them as well.
So are those machines that are going to take off in job sites? I've never seen one in the wild yet.
So they are in the wild, but usually they're on very specific projects. For example, there was a Daimler project in Europe where they're building large garages. They had like 1,500 holes to be drilled. Very effective to have a robot which is just running and doing this. It's not as effective if it has to go room by room and drill 5 holes here and there. So if you have hundreds of holes to be drilled, then this is super effective. So it's been deployed in Europe. It's been deployed in a few sites in US. I think they're also thinking of expanding to some parts in Asia and stuff. But there are quite a few of these robots out there right now.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating. You never seem to get like a side by side, the Jybot next to the Baobot. One of them's got to be better, at least in
Uh,
some things.
so that I will not comment on because I haven't done the side-by-side test. I have my views on it, but I'd rather not share it.
Fair enough. Okay. So if we move on to the next section in on-site, it's automation of autonomous vehicles, and there's some really interesting companies here, I think.
But so yes, this category has a lot of different things there. There's crane automation in there. There's automation of heavy equipment there. There's autonomy layers there, which is all built in. So autonomy is a concept everybody's familiar with because we heard of autonomous cars for so long. So that technology is getting transferred to aspects of construction. So when we talk about autonomy in construction, you can use it for 3 or 4 different use cases. The first and most obvious use case is the large equipment. You have the shovels and you have the excavators and you have the forklifts and so on. So automation of those vehicles. You also have automation of robots inside the buildings, like these fastening robots and drilling robots and so on and so forth. And then you have certain companies like Polymath, which is there. So what Polymath is doing is it's telling these robotics companies that, hey, you build the final integration with the machine, we will build the autonomy layer, which will help you navigate in any environment and help you go anywhere so that you don't have to spend tons of resources in terms of making the autonomy algorithms very good. Uh, it's just advancing the robotic tech stack further so that anybody can build a robot. Just like your mobility platforms or your ABB builds your arms and stuff. So now people don't have to build everything from scratch. They're just integrators rather than having to put every part of it together. So let me take a few examples.
Yeah, please.
What Safe AI is doing is it's looking at heavy equipment, mostly in the mining segment, a little bit in the construction segment, where it's taking excavators and cranes and making them fully autonomous. The founder comes from he's been at Caterpillar, he's been at Apple, he's been at Ford, and he's been working in the autonomy teams, and he's trying to create a full stack system in which you can make them completely autonomous. AIM is almost exactly the same, very similar concept, very similar. So the difference is the algorithms between the autonomy layer that they're building. Built robotics is a little bit different in the sense that when they first started off, they were not fully autonomous. They had people in the back end trying to monitor the vehicles when they're going from place to place. So they needed a little bit of a human component to it, but they are also trying to add much more autonomy to that. Then I come to some of the other ones like UltraViz and Telio and stuff. UltraViz is more about crane automation. It's not vehicle automation. It's about how you can take large cranes and add sensors to them to basically automate them so that they don't need a human operators, because crane operators are very, very expensive now. And cranes themselves, if they're not being utilized, then that's super expensive for a job site. So this is about sensorizing them and automating the tasks of cranes. And Telio is also something similar. Insight is again a crane analytics and crane software. So I would categorize these as two segments. There's crane related automation and there is vehicle related automation. So this is the two major segments within autonomy that I would say exist.
Very cool. I imagine if Tesla comes out with some kind of driving artificial intelligence, all of these companies would immensely benefit from it.
It would, and that is what Polymath is trying to do. It's trying to be something like Tesla, where it is providing a tech stack, where it's saying, okay, we'll provide the software layer for you to go and build autonomy applications. Because there's also a lot of work in customizing it to specific models. When I say excavator, not every excavator is the same. Caterpillar is different from Komatsu, is different from Terex, and so on and so forth. And even in them, the specific vehicle types are different. So automation requires understanding form factors, their movement patterns, the capacity, and all of that. And that's why it's not a straightforward problem to solve.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be competing with Tesla.
Uh, yeah, neither would I.
The next one up is the welding robots. The
And welding, I would say welding and rebar are not same, but in the similar kind of spectrum. So
yeah,
I take
especially with robotics.
I take both of them same time. So welding robotics in manufacturing, this is fairly standard because welding is a expensive operation, an operation which requires very skilled operators and stuff. And that's why doing it through robots is very helpful. In construction, this has been a little bit more complicated because welding also involves fire and heating elements and so on. So safety requirements are a little bit higher. So we haven't seen too many. There's path robotics, which it's still in manufacturing. Does some construction, but it's mostly in manufacturing. And here, what they're doing is it's a standard robot, but the difference is they're able to handle heat and the heating elements, and they have to combine force control, understanding of welding joints, understanding of the flow that's happening, and then perform operations, because the criticality of the weld is very, very important. And that's why these are quite expensive robots when they build welding robots. Reaper, on the other hand, it's slightly different. Today, a lot of what they do with rebar is build rebar cages. So here it is bending of rebar or tying of rebar, and this can be done both on-site as well as off-site. Uh, so advanced construction robotics and SkyMove do it on-site. So what they do is they take rebar, they bend it on-site, they place it, and it's ready to go during the concrete pouring process. Toggle and Rebar Tech, on the other hand, they actually build ready-made rebar cages in factories and they ship them to site. So slightly different kind of operations, but both are trying to make this process more efficient, because humans doing it is backbreaking. You have to keep bending down, you have to put a lot of effort and do the rebar tying again and again. And back injuries are the highest reason for labor premiums or labor insurance in the industry. And that is not good for humans, not good from a cost perspective. So automating it is very, very helpful.
Yeah, it seems like it would be easier to ship rebar before it's been bent and tied.
Uh, it is. It is easier, and that's why on-site is probably preferable, because you don't have to change workflows. But if you ship and tie it, and you have designed for it, if you design for it, then it could still work, because it takes more space. If you send cages versus you send rebars, it obviously takes more space, but you're saving significantly on labor cost, because then it becomes plug and play. You don't have to do the installation on site. So it's just two different models. Based on how it's designed, you can find efficiency in both cases.
Okay, and now on to scaffolding. Every building that needs outdoor work, multi floors up, needs scaffolding. So how can you automate that?
So Kewazo, what they do is like they kind of put an elevator in the scaffold for you to for this activity to be safer, because you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with heights and you're dealing with also heavy materials. So basically you plug this elevator into the scaffold, and therefore you're able to move the material on throughout the different floors. And they just raised 10 million Series A, so they're.
Back to AIM Robotics, is that a different company than the other AIM?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Cool. And then the next section below is exoskeletons like Iron Man.
So exoskeletons is a lot of fun, right? So, and typically exoskeletons have multiple functions, right? You have full body exoskeletons, you have upper body
Missiles.
exoskeleton, exos. So you have upper body exoskeletons, you have low body, and also you have exoskeletons which are fully metallic and have a full structure. You have fabric-based exoskeletons. You also have exoskeletons which are just monitoring parts of your body, basically motion-based, which are triggering alerts and so on and so forth. So it just depends on application.
Mhm.
In construction, the most prevalent applications where you use exoskeletons is either for doing tasks above your head, where you're basically drilling or fastening and stuff, or it's for lifting stuff when you're bending and picking stuff, or you're doing applications bending down, whether finishing on the floor or drilling on the floor or doing any of that. So I'll pick a few from here and talk about each one. So the one Hilti has built is more a mechanical exoskeleton, where you are doing overhead drilling. So it's just an exoskeleton that goes on the top of the body, provides you upper body strength, and helps you do the drilling and stuff. Right?
Does it
Good.
do a lift or a lock?
It does more a lock. It does not. It's more mechanical. It doesn't have an energy source, which is
Hmm.
actually providing you power. So it's just augmenting the strength that you have, but not really providing you a large lift in terms of support from that side. On
Understood.
on the other extreme end is something like seismic. I don't know if we put seismic in there, but seismic is a fabric-based exoskeleton that is battery powered. That basically sends electricity through the exoskeleton, and it tracks your body movement. And based on compression of the fabric, it provides you support wherever you need it, whether it's lower back support, whether upper body support. And this is like defense for the US military, developed for the US military and spun off from that. So they wanted to have a really, really lightweight exoskeleton. And eventually that project, I don't think worked out, but they found use cases outside of that to deploy.
That sounds like magic.
It's almost like magic. The first time I wore it, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah,
It
I'm
was
skeptical of that one.
so, and then there are things like Suitex, right? Suitex is almost a full body suit, and Sarkos is the one which is a full body suit. Sarkos is almost like Iron Man suit, but the Suitex is a more limited version of that, where it's a more of a suit based exoskeleton, which is supporting you in both lifting and performing tasks, and addition to your strength itself. And there are a couple others which are not mentioned here, like Levitate and so on, which also provide specific application-based support for either bending, lifting, mobility, and stuff like that. So it's a segment which is evolving. A lot of these applications don't directly come from construction. They actually start in healthcare. There's a exoskeleton for skiing, for example, and they find applications in construction. So we've seen a lot of these start in other industries and then gravitate towards construction.
Yeah, and just adding there also the opportunity that gives, because there could be accidents in the construction site for people that come from construction and have had any sort of accidents. This sort of exoskeleton can also help them continue with their jobs. So this opens up for disabled people opportunities to not having to change industry or this type of impacts.
Which of the suits of these companies is the easiest to put on, and which is the most difficult to get on?
So Hilti is fairly easy to put on. That's because it's a very limited kind of system. It's just an upper body strength. And size is also not too difficult to put on, to be very fair. It's not here, we should add that. Sarkos, I would imagine, is probably the most difficult to put on because it's just a full body suit. I don't know how you get into it and get out of it. I haven't put it on personally, but I would imagine it takes some time to get into that suit.
I think that would be part of the due diligence before an investment.
For sure, for sure.
The after exoskeleton, that's a cool section. You have reality capture, which isn't super interesting to me, but maybe you have a couple shining stars in there.
So, Margo, you want to take that? Should I take that?
You can take that.
So reality capture, it's on the edge of basically robotics, right? So reality capture can be done by humans. It can also be done by robots. The one which is most interesting for me is completely autonomous reality capture. So there's a company called AI for Humanity, which is coming out of JPL Labs in LA, actually. And that has the ability to work with Spot, with drones, and with any other types of robots to autonomously enter unseen areas and capture everything around it. So why this is interesting is it helps you build a digital replica of the job site or a mining site or anything that is entering into. And if you're able to capture it at periodic intervals, then you can monitor progress, you can understand how the environment's changing, and coordination becomes so much efficient because you're coordinating based on what is reality than just what's been in the plans and so on and so forth. And that's why the space becomes very interesting, right? And also reality capture can be done at a very basic level in terms of saying you do photogrammetry and get very rough kind of idea of what's happening. You can do it with LiDAR scans, which is very accurate through point clouds and stuff. So it just depends on what is your use case and what you're trying to solve.
All right, I admit it's pretty cool, but I think I get intimidated because robots I'm supposed to be the one with the camera, not the robot. So you're trying to take my job. It's like if there was a section here for automated investments, you guys wouldn't like that so much.
I wouldn't mind it for personal investing when I don't have to worry about my money. But if they come into ventures, yes, that's something I would worry about.
Well, is there anything else in reality capture you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we covered it.
Great. 3D printing, I cover a ton on my channel. Maybe you guys have some overarching ideas about it.
Yeah, no, with 3D printing, I think so. Basically, and if you know it from your channel better, basically you can build either an entire house or some of its components in either in the job site or off site. So as I was mentioning before, you have some of these startups like Cobots, Icon, Evocons that are for the job sites, and like ITIF, Mighty Buildings that are in the factories and shipping it. So and this technology has had a lot of attention in the last year because it has the potential to build cheaper, quicker, and in a more sustainable way as you reduce the waste of resources and you have a controlled environment. Also it has different technologies, so you can have a gantry system or you can have a robotic arm that provides like different depending if you want to standardize, so to say, the production, or you want so more freedom of movement. And we see it has a lot of potential. So perhaps also mentioning the challenges that we see for this technology in the sense that the biggest one would say to finding the right mixture of materials, and here you have different solutions, some of them looking for like ordinary concrete or some other looking for more sustainable materials. But as I was saying, so depending if they are on the job site or in factories, they can have challenges on in order to make the layers not too flowable, not for them to harden too fast. So there's a challenge there. Also on the logistics side, so if let's say they build part of the elements of the building in the factories and then they have to ship it, as we were mentioning it before with the cages and with the rebar, so it's big pieces that need to be shipped, so they can be harmed over when shipped, or that are heavy and big in volume, so that could be a problem. And then also the last one is about reinforcement, right? So they are working on ways not to need the rebar for the building, but right now rebar it's still done very manually. So I think they need to overcome, or they need to see how to make it work basically.
Yeah, I think that's a good analysis. It's interesting to note it's one of the biggest sections of the map.
It's very crowded, and people are trying to differentiate based on all the factors that Marga said, but also on sustainability, right? How they look at new materials that can be sustainable, recycled material and stuff. Because it's crowded now, people are trying to come up with new ways of doing it. So what is their edge when they start looking at 3D printing and stuff?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different companies involved. Uh, Crowded isn't really a word I would use to describe construction technologies yet, because they're not really, it's not like they're shoulder to shoulder. They're regionally so far apart.
Yes,
They're
I
rarely
agree.
competing for jobs in the same area.
I agree. So when we talk in construction, if we have more than one solution in that space, we think it's okay. It's more than what we're used to,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Because usually there are no solutions, and in 3D printing there are many solutions. So we're very happy. But it's more than what we would expect. So reality capture, 3D printing, modular are probably the three spaces where we actually have multiple solutions, though they are segmented by either geography or sector and so on and so forth. They have their own niche, but at least we are seeing more than two, three solutions in this space.
Well, now we have the drone section. My first question is, are any of these better than DJI?
Uh, no. The short answer is no, because DJ has done a really, really good job in terms of everything that they've done. But the issue with DJI is now it's banned, right? From a US market perspective,
Really?
you can't really use DJI on a lot of projects. So
Any
that is
federal?
great. Yeah, any federal, but even contractors are wary of using DJI on their projects
I got
because
to
of
get a new drone.
yes, and that's created an opportunity for a lot of them. And what a lot of these startups have done is they're not just trying to replace DJI, they're trying to be application specific. For example, progress monitoring was one of the application. But if you look at inspection is where you see a lot of these come into play. So inspection could be bridge inspection, could be facade inspection, could be uh, inspection through infrared or visual inspection, whichever you're trying to do. And these are very manual tasks today. And having drones be able to do that brings a lot of efficiency into these processes, right? Also, now that there's more capacity for drones are being used for window washing, drones are being used for material transport. So the application set for drones has started to expand significantly. So it's not just about the build of the drone, it's also ability of the drone to do different things at this point in time. And that's why we think it's an emerging segment. And the US market has kind of been invigorated by the DJI ban on, and there was no, DJI was basically throttling any new startups that are coming in. But in the last 3 years, we've actually seen a lot more startups come into this space.
Yeah, there was one company I visited called Terran Robotics that wanted to do Adobe construction with drones. They
Mhm.
were just starting to do some testing. So are there any other companies on this list that are doing physical construction instead of LiDAR scans or something like that?
So there's one called SkyMo, which is trying to do rebar tying. So
Hmm.
they're also now building a terrestrial robot, but they started off with trying to do rebar tying. Similarly, Civ Robotics used to be Civ Drone. So they used to do staking using the drones but the
Hmm.
thing with drones is the stability is a little bit harder. With terrestrial robots, the stability is much higher. So we've seen a lot of these drone companies which are doing staking or rebar tying and others move to terrestrial robots because it's just easier from a technology perspective to get stability when you're using terrestrial robots.
Well, in the beginning of the call, you said that you think offsite is very promising for the future. So maybe we save the best section for last and move on to the two things on the right, OPS and maintenance
Yes, let's do that. Uh,
and demolition.
so for
I'm
facade
actually
clean,
really interested in these things. I would say that they're more important than the layout and the LiDAR scanning robots because the window cleaning, waste recycling, these are jobs that have to happen all the time and they're done by humans usually. So automating them is really a substantial process.
completely. Marco, do you want to take facade cleaning and I take the rest?
Yeah, so basically their facade cleaning or window cleaning in general, especially with skyscraper, it's a very dangerous task. And as you were saying, it's a task that's going to happen on a repeated basis. And so having a robot do this task makes a lot of sense. And the technology behind is different. So sometimes you have, for example, drones, as we were saying, that they wash the facade. Sometimes we have literally the not the scaffold, but I don't know, the cages that where a human would be using, that is instead of a human you have a robot there. So technology is different, but basically they're trying to solve for the safety problem.
That sounds pretty important. I imagine there's a lot of unsafe work that happens in window washing.
Yeah.
So what's the you mentioned some of them are drones.
Yeah.
Can you paint a verbal picture of some of the other robots in this sector?
So they have two mechanisms. So one, they have every building at the top has anchors from which you
Hmm.
have wires which can come down. So they use those wires to basically come down. And then they have two mechanisms. They have suction mechanism and they have force control mechanisms where they have actually propellers which keep them a certain distance from the surface. And also what they have to adjust for at these high elevations, the wind speeds can be quite high. So these propellers also make sure that they are balanced even when they're high wind speeds. So it's multiple mechanisms which create stability for them to be positioned right as they're doing the window cleaning operation. So waste recycling, you could be talking about plastic waste, you could be talking about timber waste, you could be talking about concrete waste, and so on. We'll pick the first two, right? The first one is waste robotics, and this does actually sorting of different kinds of materials to ensure that waste on job sites is collected and sorted and sent. Because more than 60% of landfill comes from construction waste. If we're able to recycle something, then we're not just saving on the cost from a recycling perspective, but also avoiding the landfills and so on and so forth. So what waste robotics does is the sorting and then collection of waste from the job sites. The next one, Urban Machine, is actually even more interesting in the sense that this is used for timber recycling. So what it does, it sends a robot on job sites. It collects the timber and takes this timber and takes out all the metal. It actually uses computer vision to identify all the nails and blades and every metal particle which is there and extracts it. Either pulls it out using tweezers or it just cuts off sections where it's difficult to extract and stuff. And then what would typically go into the landfill, they send it to timber recycling plants. And this is processed and then used. So they're actually making money out of collecting waste. And this is good for the contractor because they're saving money. They don't have to dispose it. It's good for the timber manufacturers because this is old, high quality wood, which they can't find now in different places. And it's good for the startup because they're making money out of the process, and it's good for the environment as well. So that's like a super cool kind of startup. And this one actually, GV, Google Ventures, Gradient Ventures, and Lower Carbon actually invested in them recently. A very cool startup. And if you ever come to the Bay Area, you should go visit them. We're really excited about them.
Yeah, they have a good total addressable market too.
Yes, they do. They do. Good team and also a good mix. Construction folks as well as technologists who come together to set this company up. And then
Very
Demolition, I'll go very briefly. Demolition these are both large companies, and what they're doing is just going and doing the demolition of large walls and structures and so on, rather than humans and cranes doing it. These are robots who are going and doing these activities.
I saw one automated demolition robot that used water jets. I forget the name of it. Does that ring a bell?
No, I don't think it's either one of these because these are both physical ones.
It might have been Built Robotics.
Build doesn't do demolition actually, but I could find out. Water can be used for demolition. So what you're saying is completely accurate from how demolition could be done. I just don't know if any of these is using that method.
Well, what about you have solar install and maintenance included as well?
So what solar does is, so there are two startups that renovate. What they're doing is they're doing roofing. So it's more about it's having a robot which goes and install the tiles and makes roofs and stuff like that. A very early stage robot, and today it's still to be deployed commercially on sites. It's a concept, and they're doing pilots and so on and so
It's the
forth.
most deadly trade.
Yes, because you are standing on roofs, you will fall down eventually. And yeah, you are standing on roofs and bending down and doing the operation. So definitely something that needs to be automated, but fairly complicated to do because of the angles involved, because the weight of the products involved, because of lack of space, because you can't really stand anywhere and do that. You don't have a space for robots to settle down and lay this because you'll have to lay the entire roof and stuff like that. So complicated, but they have an innovative way in terms of having anchor points and installing this and so on. And Soltrex is doing that for solar panels. So solar panel installation is also cumbersome and time consuming, and Soltrex is in that space.
Very cool. Is there anything else to add?
I think there's a lot more happening in this space overall. Even in the solar space, there's cleaning robots, there's leveling robots. There's actually a really cool robot which clears all the vegetation in the space and stuff. We haven't mentioned all of that because those are not exactly construction robots, but there are lots of peripheral robots that could augment what we have on this list itself.
Solar is such a new field. A lot of those jobs are kind of new jobs anyway. And so if they're taken by robots from the start, it's kind of not the same as a robot taking a person's job, which is
exactly
what I like to see.
As
long as the unemployment rate is low, it's okay to say that, I think.
See, today it's not robots taking people's jobs. In construction, there's like 500,000 people that we need, which are short. And this is widening day by day. So robots are going to be necessary to do construction in the future, not because they're replacing humans, because there are no humans to do the jobs. So it's very important that we have more and more robots on the job site.
Yeah, I think at this point, a lot of people realize that even when I post TikToks that get millions of views saying that robots are taking all the people's jobs, there's nobody complaining in the comments section like the robot took my job. I'm not able to work in construction anymore because the robots are here. Uh, I've never seen anything like that.
No, actually, what so just want to mention that what we think is that their work will change. So we see a shift in their task being more supervisory and less less physical intense because of the deployment of robots. So that this is how we see them evolving towards more supervisory or as I was saying, less physical task.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So now we move on to the final section, which offsite production in the beginning you guys mentioned you think is really promising. So what's the general overview?
So the general overview of offsite robotics is, you see, manufacturing is significantly more efficient than construction today. And that's happened because of a few different things. That's happened because of predictability, that's happened because of repeatability, that's because of structured environments. And if we want to bring construction to the same levels of efficiency, we need to move in that direction. And prefab has a big part to play in getting us there. And that's why we see adoption of prefab increasing significantly over a period of time in this space. I'm not saying 100% of construction will be prefab. That's probably going to be difficult, but the proportion of prefab in construction is going to increase. And that's already starting to happen. That's why you have that list, which is so many different companies, right? And this will happen in different shapes and forms. So there's prefab, which can happen where you are taking components offsite, manufacturing it there and bringing. So that's what. So you'll see factory OS, you'll see prescient, you'll see plant prefab. A lot of these are trying to do, and they're segmenting themselves by residential, by commercial, or by ADUs. And so, for example, Periscope there is trying to do it for ADUs, and the way they are optimizing it is they're designing their products in such a way that everything that they build can be flat packed. It can be flat packed. It can be shipped in containers. So you're saving logistics costs, because that's the big issue with transportation of 3D printed homes and stuff. Because of bulkiness, transportation costs can go up. But if you can flat pack it and you can containerize it, then the logistics costs go down significantly. And if you can still install it very, very quickly, that makes it much more efficient. Then if you look at other models that are automated architecture, which is taking a very different approach, they're building tiny factories. They're building tiny factories close to job sites where robots are actually building cassettes. They're building cassettes which can be installed on job sites. So your job site manufacturing is still much faster and it's still localized. And so you're not actually having to transport it huge distances. So the cost of building houses can be dramatically lower. So automated architecture right now is claiming to build houses which could be 25% of the cost of existing buildings there, right? And that dramatically shifts the affordable housing landscape. And that's
Wait, who's claiming to be 25% cheaper?
Automated architecture. They're not 25% cheaper, 25% of the cost, 75% cheaper than buildings. And this is a London-based startup.
I don't see them on the list of offsite prefab and modular.
So AUAR, R is the automated architecture.
Yeah.
So that's the one, right? So they're very interesting. Again, early stage, they're still deploying on job sites. So they aim to build houses within 40,000 cost, right? So that would be very interesting if they're actually able to do that. Again, it's single story today, probably 2 stories over a period of time. So
what kind of scale in units?
So their target is to build 10 to 20 this year, and then scale it to hundreds and thousands and so on and so forth. But they're still very early in the process. They're still building their first few units right now and piloting it out, right? But the concept
is much easier to say 30, 40,000 at 10 units than at 1,000.
I agree. And that's why it's still to be proven. A lot of these are still test balloons, which are going up, right? If you look at others like cloud apartments, they're taking a slightly different apart. They're playing the role of integrators. So they're saying we will optimize the factory by working with model of players. We will optimize the design, and we will optimize the installation, and we will be the integrators and be full stack providers in the sense that we'll get the installation done, but we won't own any of the capital behind, right? So that's also an interesting approach. So if you look at some of the other Periscope I already spoke about, if you look at Blockable has identified multifamily homes, but smaller town homes kind of projects where they could have 2-story or 3-story buildings, and they could stack their blocks together to make sure it's a very efficient kind of setup.
That sounds like a Boxable copycat.
It's very similar. It's not very different from Boxable. Connect Homes is another one, right? Again, containerized shipping. They started with single family homes. They moved to connect shelters to provide shelters to a lot of players because affordable housing in LA was a problem. And now they're coming back to single family and multifamily homes and stuff. So everybody's used a slightly different segment, slightly different model, but objective is the same. How do you manufacture it away from site to avoid the complications of communication, collaboration, and all of that, and still not spend a lot of money in logistics? So it's about optimizing both the logistics cost as well as the labor cost on site.
4 years ago, I imagine Catera would have been on this list.
Yes, Katera would have been the biggest name on this list.
And what would you have said about them back then?
Even back then with Katera, my concern was they were trying to do too much too fast. And that's probably because SoftBank was pushing them to do a lot of this. They were trying to not just be a modular player. They were trying to be a GC. They're trying to be a sub. They're trying to build everything in-house. And the issues for them were more from an execution perspective on job site than anything else, because the coordination on job site was not up to scratch in a lot of cases. They could build products, but they could not deploy the products at the scale they wanted to do. And when you take that kind of money and invest in all kinds of stuff, construction is not easy to scale early on, right? So for them to have the ambitions they had, it is good that they tried to do it, but unfortunately, execution wasn't where it needed to be.
Yeah, an interesting thing happens, I guess, at some point where it goes from something innovative and cool to just a tool on the job site. Uh, which of these have evolved to that point where they're really just a tool on the job site and it's not something they're thinking of? This is the innovative R&D.
So a factory OS and plant prefab are fairly further along. For example, factory OS was supplying to Google for their new facilities and stuff. So they've done this for years. It used to be Blue Home before then. So they're fairly established. They've identified a niche, and its prefab is a part of regular construction process for a lot of companies now. And this is just a small list, right? Prefab is also something companies have in-house now. DPR, for example, has their own prefab facility. A lot of mechanical construction firms have their own prefab facility and stuff. So that's become part of the way they do business. Goldbeck, for example, which is in Europe, has significantly large prefab facilities. And Europe is actually much further along than US when it comes to prefab adoption, and especially the Nordics. If you look at the Nordics, 40% of the house are either modular or prefab. They basically
they can only build in one season.
Yes, and there are things that drive some of these, right? And if you look at new homes, 80% of them are going to be built that way. And it's about demand and supply, right? If you have enough reasons for you to do it in a certain manner, then the adoption improves.
Yeah, the interesting spectrum in offsite production is the level of automation, in my opinion, which some of things are prefab, but it's just a bunch of people in a warehouse swinging hammers. That's not automated. It's prefab, but it's not automated. So which of these is the most automated, would you say?
I think the most automated is not on this list. It's actually in stealth. So there's a company on the East Coast, which I'm not supposed to take the name. They are fully automated from a back-end perspective. They actually have end-to-end automation when it comes to installation, not just of the panels, how it moves from shop to shop is also fully automated, and there's barely any people in the factory. They've raised a lot of capital. A lot of that is from the founders, but a lot of it is also bank raised and stuff. And they should be public in the next 3 to 6 months. So that is the most automated I've seen. Off the list here,
Wait,
if
which
I
company you said you're not supposed to say their name?
yes, they're in stealth, and a lot of what they've shared is in confidence. So I've been asked not to talk about that. That's why I can't mention it. Off the list here, automated architecture is probably going to be the most automated because of the deployment of robotic arms and everything else that they have. Uh, Connect Homes is starting to become more automated. Uh, of the rest, uh, they're all semi-automated. I don't see
There's a
any of.
company on the East Coast that has a full automated system that's going to IPO in 3 to 6 months in
Not
stealth.
I did not IPO. They might be public in the sense that they might
Oh,
talk
okay.
about what they're doing in the next 3 6 months.
Fascinating. And are they targeting residential or commercial?
Residential as of now, residential multifamily.
Residential and multifamily. And you think I've never heard of this company,
You might have heard of them. I have no idea. So
but
they've
they're
been a
not on the internet. They're not doing big news stories. They haven't done any
so
media.
let they haven't done any media. So
Wow.
they haven't done any media.
I'm trying to think of who it might be, but that just eliminated a lot of people.
So
So there's some companies are pretty good at being stealthy. It's impressive.
they do have a website. Now, they didn't have like it this 2 months back, but they do have a website, but they don't have much at all on the website. For the level of advancement they have, they don't have any of that on the website.
Very interesting. The best construction companies tend to have really crappy websites, but I don't imagine that extends over to construction tech.
Uh, yes, I agree.
Anyway, the that was a lot of companies we covered. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to go over all of them with me. Now that we've talked about all of them, uh, yeah, what segments do you think are promising? What are the things that are interesting to you? Where do you think maybe some founders could start new? I know you mentioned some things are crowded, but maybe some areas are ripe for innovation.
It's a I would think of it from a workflow perspective in terms of and robotics is helpful in construction anytime you are automating a process which is hard to do, which is probably dangerous, and it's probably taking a lot of time from a human uh, timing perspective. It's right. Anything that is very bespoke is difficult to get efficiency from because if you're doing one at a time, then doing it faster than humans is difficult because there's a setup time that you're trying to do. So this is where I come to the topics like fastening, topics like finishing, concrete finishing. If someone wants to do that, I think that will be a great application to do because if you're bending down, you're trying to finish the floor, but it's not easy to do. There was a startup called Roin Robotics which tried to do this, but the technical difficulties prevented them from scaling, so they shut down at some point in time. But if someone is trying to do concrete finishing, that would be very, very interesting, right? It's Similarly, if you look at installation of cable trays, uh, installation of heavy stuff on job sites, whether it's cable trays, whether it's drywall, or whether it's facades, any of these tasks, if that can be done in an automated manner, I think that would be very useful, right? Seamless material movement on job sites would be interesting as well. The difficulty there is there's so many barriers and such an unstructured environment that doing it cost efficiently is hard. Cost efficiency is going to be very important because people generally don't want to pay too much right now because cost of labor is high, but it's not that high that uh, you can deploy very expensive robots on job site today. So those are some things that I can think about, but I'm sure there's many others which will come into place once the foundations have been built.
Yeah, what do you think, Margarita? What it kind of areas is the tech improving the fastest, and
Yeah, I would say also sometimes we look at the different technologies, like understanding the as maybe Vivin was saying, cost and advantage. So perhaps is like from a technological perspective like a fascinating robot, but then is too costly and perhaps not the best technology for the use case itself. As we were saying, painting, is it better a drone or is it better like a on the ground robot? Like these type of questions are the ones that should be asked as well when identifying the robots with the most potential. I would love to see also more robots on the demolition, waste management, and recycling part of the value chain. So making many of this material reused or reusable. This is where I would also love to see some more innovation as the startup we were saying about wood, but it could be glass, it could be concrete, so different types of material. That would be good to see as well.
Is there anything you've noticed the people you meet in this industry have in common, whether it be the founders or similarities?
Resiliency. Construction's hard. So if you expect a smooth ride, that's normally not going to happen. So people are humble about the fact of what adoption means in this industry. If you come with the attitude that I'll break everything and I will conquer the world, that's probably not going to work very well in the industry. Paying respect to the workflow, understanding that the fact that change has not happened is not because people don't want change. It's because there are peculiarities about this industry which are important to recognize. The people who understand the workflows and then try to implement solutions which improve the workflows without disrupting it too much are the ones who will succeed, because construction margins are very, very small. So the ability to take risk is not very high. People want to de-risk everything because if one thing goes wrong, then the project is underwater. And that makes life very difficult for them. So the appetite to take risk is not very high. So you have to spend time, learn their language, learn their workflow, and then deploy solutions. And then you have a much higher ability to succeed.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah, the developments are impressive, and there's more companies jumping in all the time. So I'm sure we'll see a lot of exciting construction technologies in the coming years. Uh, is there anything else that you guys are looking for? Is Akua, are you guys looking to raise money right now or uh,
It's a
plug anything?
so as a fund, uh, we have fundraising which goes on. We don't talk about it publicly. We
Okay.
are always looking to deploy capital as well. So we're always happy to talk to people on any aspect, whether it's startups. Yeah, we always welcome more industry people into the industry. We are very, very excited to have more people come in. Happy to talk to potential investors. So any of that is something we're happy to do.
Is there a minimum assets under management to get your attention?
It's all something we can discuss, not something we can talk about publicly.
Sure, I'm sure I don't qualify, but yeah, the maybe yeah, I'm just asking in case anyone's watching who wants to. Would you help people invest like private placements, or how does anything you can discuss like publicly or
So I can I can talk about conceptually because
yeah,
of
yeah,
SEC guidelines, we're not supposed to solicit investments
in
publicly.
the conceptual realm.
In the conceptual realm, uh, for sure, all of those are potential opportunities. We help people invest with us if they are helping. If people are interested in startups, we help them think through what needs to be done and how they can do that. We provide access to startups. Obviously, if they want to invest in the fund, we discuss that as well. So there are various avenues of interacting, uh, but usually difficult to do with retail investors. We do that with people who have an understanding of the industry, and we make exceptions as and needed. We work a lot with corporates. For corporates, we obviously spend a lot more time helping them think through their workflows, how we could be innovation partners, and so on and so forth. And with specific individuals who can add value to the startups that we work with, or who we can benefit from their understanding of the space. We're always happy to work with them also.
Very cool. And is there a shining star of your portfolio, maybe a best pick investment so far for Zakua?
There are a few, but one I would want to talk about is a company called EcoWorks. EcoWorks was voted as the PropTech of the year in Europe. Their CEO was actually selected to speak on the panel with Bill Gates and the chairman of IMF just a couple of weeks back. What they're doing is they're decarbonizing existing buildings. So Germany has a new mandate on reducing the carbon footprint of existing buildings. So they're building a second skin around buildings
Wow.
to basically decarbonizing and make them carbon neutral. And what would typically take 18 months in a traditional renovation kind of process, they do in 6 weeks. And they do it in a minimally invasive manner so that people don't have to relocate and find other homes and stuff like that. And they do it in a modular fashion as well, because all of the panels are outsourced and they just install. And once they install, you can actually track the behavior of the building and insulate the characteristics of emissions and basically a carbon footprint. So that's why it excites us. It's something that's improving the quality of life for people. It's better for the environment, and it's also super cost efficient. And they've done really, really well. So their revenue growth has been off the charts. So from when we invested to the bookings that they have, it's almost 50x. So it's
Wow.
phenomenal.
The timing's great too. Energy is such an important issue these days.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like they're helping out with that.
Yep.
Cool. Is there any horrible investments Zakua made that you can talk about?
It's not yet. We
Oh,
love
that's
all.
good.
We are only 1 year in the cycle, and you ask me
Oh,
after
wow.
this after 2 years. I'm sure we'll have some war stories to share with you because we will make mistakes. But so far, we're very happy with every investment that we made.
Yeah, I mean, in the startup world, people always talk about the statistics like 9 out of 10 don't work out. So you never expect them all to be winners. You get one or two really good ones, and that's the game, right?
That is the game. But for our founders, we want every one of them to succeed. From an
Yeah, you
industry,
develop friendships with them.
because it's not just about returns. Yes, we do want best in class returns, but it's also about making the world a better place because they are all solving real world problems. It's not another app or not another social media site. These are
They're all trying to solve real world problems.
yes, they're trying to solve real world problems because if if they succeed, that's good for everyone, and that's why we're really backing them. We really want them to succeed, and we want to support them in the journey.
Yeah, I think it's a very important role the financiers of construction technology play. Uh, it's a noble pursuit of finance. You guys aren't like the short sellers, and or maybe you secretly are short selling. I don't know.
No, no.
No, we are not.
You can disclose that.
Yeah, because we're not doing it, we can talk about it.
Yeah, well, it's always fun to talk to optimists about the future of construction technology and hopefully realists. Uh, I think we talked about some pretty realistic stuff today. We weren't talking too much in the realm of speculation, and there's a lot of really interesting companies out there. It's hard to imagine. I mean, some of them have to be pretty successful.
Yeah, I'm sure some of them will be successful.
And there's a huge demand problem. Everybody always talks about millions of units in almost every country.
Uh, there's such a large labor shortage, housing shortage, and also the carbon emissions and footprints and all of that. Construction is responsible for some of the biggest issues facing humanity, right? And we have to get our act together. We have to make sure that we are supporting the ecosystem and moving forward. Because as you said, I mentioned crowded from the 3D printed space, but the reality is not. It's not enough. It's not even close to being enough. So we still have a lot to do.
Yeah, the macro environment's changed quite a bit with rates going up from 0 to now we're at what, like 3, almost 4 or something. I don't know. But the macros changed so much. Fundraising seems to have become a lot more difficult. How has that changed the environment for startups?
So for the startups, fundraising is definitely harder today than it was even a year back, and that's the reality. So I won't sugarcoat that. But everything outside of fundraising is easier. It's easier to hire people. It's easier to get people's attention. The metrics for evaluating startups has gone. It's not like grow, grow, grow. It's like grow efficiently and build your foundations and stuff. So this is a great time to build good companies. So yes, fundraising is hard. Yeah, that is the pain that you have to take. But if you're able to do that, then this would be an opportunity to build really good companies.
And perhaps I would just also add that the fact that has slowed down also is better in terms of due diligence. So perhaps what was not right was the speed as which previously rounds were done, and now you're able to double check everything in more depth and therefore make decisions with more conviction.
That seems very healthy to avoid situations like FTX.
Agreed.
So the slowdown in pace is a good thing. There's certainly some silver linings. The companies would have had to be a little bit prepared, though, if they just ran out of money now and they really were expecting to do another round. It's bad timing. Do you see that happen?
Happening a lot. It's happening a lot. And the good companies, the existing investors will realize that and will bridge them and will extend the runway and stuff like that. But the companies which have been overvalued and have raised too much, the failure rate will increase in this year. There will be more failures in 2023 than there were in 2021 for sure, right? Because people will start to run out of runway at this point in time. So it won't all be pretty in terms of how the market shakes out. But the best companies will find a way to survive.
I know the 3D printed construction market was hit by the layoff wave a little bit, which I think was maybe spurred a little by Elon buying Twitter. He did a huge layoff round, and every CEO always says they want to be all just like Elon. So they all started doing layoffs. And did you notice that in the other construction tech companies too, or was that just some of the 3D printing companies?
It's mostly the 3D printing companies because 3D printing companies were more mature than other construction tech firms. So I would not classify this by segment. I would classify this by stage. The companies which were doing layoffs were Series B onwards, Series B, C, D, and so on and so forth. So all of them had raised at unrealistic valuations either in 2020 or 2021. Now with the market compressing almost 60% in valuations, for them to grow into those valuations is almost impossible in the next couple of years. And to do that, you have to extend runway. You have to make sure that you're more efficient. So the layoffs have mostly happened in later stage companies which have raised a lot of money in the peak. And that's where this is coming from. And that's why you also see that in tech and everywhere else.
That's fascinating. It makes a lot of sense. It's really nice to get your guys' perspective. It's so different from the way that I typically look at things, just like getting it built or whatever.
So that's what we do. So this is our lives on evaluating trends, evaluating startups, and thinking through how the world will look like in the next few years.
Yeah, I think the audience will find it super helpful because you provided such a good overview of all the different kind of fields that are being automated at different stages, and it'll be really cool to see. I bet in like 1 year's time, 2 years' time, the list is going to multiply and develop and grow in really cool ways.
That's something that we will be updating the market map, so we will see how it grows.
Yeah, you have an update coming soon, you mentioned.
We've updated just with some of the companies that reach out to us, but we want to do this on an annual basis, like then add those that have started in the next year or that have gotten traction, and they deserve to be on the market map.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's some we didn't talk about today that deserve to be there, and maybe we'll get them next year.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you guys want to cover?
We're good for now. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.